as you could possibly imagine. Let's see, Jacob, he's always updating us on Boise State. Jeremiah Dickey, their athletic director, formerly at Baylor. Boise State came out with a potential renovation to all of its sports, and looks like they are making a move for the Big 12 in the future, or for the conference to at least notice.
Well, they need to. That's what you got to do. I mean, to make sure that, look, if it's not the Big 12, it might be somebody else. You never know. But the Big 12 seems like the most likely option, so might as well do it, especially if you get the money.
Yeah, I mean, great that they are up in their facilities. I mean, that's great news. Saw South Florida's doing something as well. And, I don't know what the Big 12 expansion holds, or, the timeline or the thoughts that are going through there right now. I mean, they just changed commissioners, so I don't know where, that falls and affects a timeline of any decisions on expansion in the future. But, I mean, Boise State is in that group that's been mentioned, or at least discussed and vetted. And, if not the Big 12, then who knows what the ever-changing landscape looks like with, the Pac-12. I mean, I know that there's been debates going back to last year when we were talking about all this about the Pac-12 and what they would want and what they wouldn't want. And I know the Pac-12's too nose in the air, snobby for the Baylors or the TCUs or whatever, because they're not going to mess with the religious schools or whatever the case may be. That's fine. They can be snobbish. And maybe that's, as a result, not a place that Boise lands. But who knows? I mean, we don't know. There might be 3 major conferences in 5 years. There might be 5. There might be 4. I mean, we really have no idea. We know the SEC is going to be around. We know the Big Ten is going to be around. We know the ACC is going to be around. The Pac-12 will be around, but, what does it look like? To what extent? Does it fold into the Big Ten? Going back to rumors from, a year and a half ago of, for example, USC and Oregon, they're looking around the room and they're looking at the SEC money and they're looking at the Big Ten money that's coming and they're going, They're kind of, looking like OU in Texas, saying, well, what about all these cast and crew around us? They're not holding up the weight, or at least that's the feeling that OU in Texas had. Why don't we go to the Big Ten or, what other option there might be and make $100 million a year more than we're making in the Pac-12? Those are the decisions that schools have to make. And if you're a USC or someone like that, then, I'm sure you're probably kicking that idea around right now with everything so up in the air and, thinking, okay, we got to worry about a Pac-12 TV negotiation at some point, but depending on how that goes, depending on what kind of money we're talking about, would it surprise y'all if there were schools looking around? It wouldn't to me. So, so saying that, if the Pac-12 just experienced a massive exodus, maybe they don't have the room to be snobby and say, well, we're not going to include the Baylors or the Boise's or the who. You might have to. You might be forced to.
And they also might just tell you to screw yourself.
And you might not have the option because Baylor or, and I throw them in there as an example because, just months ago we're talking about, well, Tech's going to go to the Pac-12 and Kansas is going with them and, all that stuff. So, I mean, I guess anything's on the table. So yeah, I mean, I think the instability right now is leaving a lot of room for questions and interesting ideas of what could be to come. And it might just all be the same when all is said and done. And just the money figures are different. But I don't think any of us really have a good idea.
What's interesting to me is when all of this happened, Texas and Oklahoma, and ever since, and even before then, there's almost this level of snobbery as we talk, almost this elitism at certain places that, we don't want to include you. We don't need them. Well, I mean, I'll still go back to the most powerful in the Big Ten and right there with the SEC. No matter if it's going to be $5 million or $6 million or 10, they're both way up here. And yes, there are some that do look down their noses at others. But you know what? From the beginning, we have said this about the SEC. They care about what is the weakest link as much as they care about who is the most powerful. Well, they understand it. They get it almost in a way like the NFL, that all 32 have to be given the same amount of revenue no matter how powerful some of them are more than others, and they can make money other ways, like the Cowboys do and others.
Well, and a lot of that snooty looking down your nose is, schools that most of the time, honestly, if you asked Ohio State or Alabama, all biases outside the door, do you guys care who would come in your conference and you have to play? They'd be like, no. Because they know that they're going to beat most of the teams they play. The teams that all don't want other teams in or look down on the ones, for the most part, are the ones who haven't done anything in a long time and are afraid to get beat by somebody who's smaller than them.
I think it's I think there might be some of that. I think it's politics. Yeah. I think it's a bunch of snobby California people. And look, I I say that, but it's the feeling that comes across like, oh, we would never allow them. Like that's what I'm basing that off of, is the nose in the air responses from some West Coast fans who immediately were like, oh, well, we would never allow. It's just like, oh, so we're not invited to your country club. Okay, thank you. We'll go find a better place that's more fun anyways. And that's where I come from with the Pac-12. I have no axe to grind and nothing against the conference. That's just the feeling that emanates sometimes. But Ohio State, they don't care. It's not about who they would beat. They're going to beat anybody anyways. They're Ohio freaking State. It's about who's bringing money. This is like John McClain, longtime NFL writer. Anytime a contract question comes up, John's going to say the same thing. What's the money situation? A guy is not wanting to report to camp. What's the money situation? Guy says he doesn't want to play somewhere anymore. What's the money situation? It always comes back to the money. All this drama and TMZ sports, all it is it comes back to money. Every single time it comes back to money. All of a sudden Xavier Howard's happy in Miami after not being for 2 years. What happened? Hey, we got more money. It's all money. In college athletics, same thing. It has nothing to do with your brand. It does have to do with your brand. It has nothing to do with your history, really. If you're a hot brand who can make big money, they'll find a place for you. And, if you're somebody that's borderline and then you have, an attachment like, oh, well, you're also a religious school, well, then you're not going to be probably as popular for a Pac-12 to want to bring in. But I think that, there's nothing really to it as far as like the winning goes. I think it's just so money driven now. So there's just only so many brands that can, look at the Big 12. Like, they don't know if they brought in extra value really or not yet. They think they did. They did the best they could. But are they still going to be making less money than they were? At least in the beginning, probably. So, there's just only so many options out there. But just going back to Boise, they're a team that, how much value do they really bring? But in terms of them landing in a power conference, I think we got to, wait and see about 5 more years or 2 more years, somewhere in that time frame, once these TV contracts get settled. And, if everybody locks their contracts in and all the leagues stay the same, then so be it. But, if somebody's not liking the numbers that they're seeing and feels like, maybe grass is greener on the other side, much like OU and Texas did, then who knows? All bets are off, and you might be in a situation where, hey, I'm Cincinnati. I didn't think I was getting a power call anytime soon, but guess what? The Big 12 wasn't expecting Texas and Oklahoma to leave, and so here we are, and now Cincy's a Power 5, and BYU's a Power 5, and so, who knows?
From Aaron Anderson, by the way, culturally and politically, UT would have been a better fit in the Pac-12, and of course, the last time there was a lot of this shuffling around, and we got to take a break here, and that was something that they were trying to work some things out. Didn't work out. It's going to happen. There's going to be constant change. And you're right. What John McClain said, no matter what a player says or a coach or a player free agent, it's always about the money, and rarely is it not.
If Boise State could prove and bring in money, they'd be in a Power 5 conference. Yep. That's what I'm saying. So, let's just see how the landscape shifts in the next couple of years.
There's no way the Big Ten ever thought they were going to have Rutgers and Maryland.
Exactly.
And guess what? Then they saw the eyeballs and said, hey, let's grab a little bit of that monopoly piece of pie as well. When we come back, Olin Buchanan, Texas.